Welcome to the Self-Determination Leadership course. My name is Luke Barber, and with me is
Tyler Hannigan.
Our course is an 8-module certification course where we'll learn about self-determination, which is defined as the action of being able to control all aspects of our life and what is important to us. In this course, we will review what it means to be truly empowered as people by digging deep into self-awareness, self-determination, and self-advocacy. We are excited to join with you as we take this journey together and grow as people who all believe that everyone should live a self-empowered life and be strong advocates, especially for individuals with disabilities. So, as we go through this course together, we must remember that we are not just gaining knowledge, but are fueling a movement of self-determination and self-advocacy to change the way people see and accept disabilities.
In this course, we will talk about the following topics. In week 1, we will learn more about the history of the movement and knowing our strengths, weaknesses, and gifts. In week 2, we will dig deep into the rules, rights, and responsibilities that we have under the law. In weeks 3 and 4, we will speak about the art of communicating and connecting with people. We will learn the 4 types of communications and what it takes to be a good listener. In week 5, we will dig deeper into what it means to be a good leader. And in week 6, charting the life course. In week 7, we will learn more about what it takes to be an advocate and then review in week 8.
So, let's begin with week 1. Tyler, why is it important to study history?
Because those who refuse to study history are doomed to repeat it.
Some of the very first references to disabilities dates back to the ancient Egyptians, where this concept is mentioned in the Papyrus of Thebes over 3,500 years ago. The ancient Romans and Greeks viewed that children born with an intellectual disability were the wrath of God's anger towards the family. Many of these children were simply left to die in the wild as a result. Of course, exceptions did occur. For instance, if the child was born to a wealthy Roman family, they had some legal rights and even guardians. But in the Middle Ages, people with intellectual disabilities were sometimes employed, willingly or not, as jesters whose sole purpose was to entertain the upper class. Prior to the 1700s, the way society treated people differed. Those that had a mild disability may not have been viewed any differently from anyone else, at least not in the legal or clinical sense. But those with severe intellectual disabilities were sometimes thought of as people who could receive divine revelation. And even some of the people who had even more severe conditions may have received care from their family or even a monastery. Other, less fortunate people with disabilities were put into idiot cages in the town center to probably serve as entertainment for people under the official justification of keeping the person out of trouble or for public safety.
It wasn't until the 1700s and the 1800s that more serious and suitable forms of interventions for people with intellectual disabilities began. In the 1800s, people with disabilities were considered meager, tragic, pitiful individuals, unfit and unable to contribute to society. They were assumed to be abnormal and feeble-minded, and numerous persons were forced to undergo sterilization. People with disabilities were also forced to enter institutions and asylums, where many spent their entire lives. The purification and segregations of persons with disabilities were considered merciful actions, but ultimately served to keep people with disabilities invisible and hidden from a fearful and biased society. It wasn't until the mid-1900s when people started to find their voice and show everyone that people with disabilities could be active members of society. People fought for others to recognize a disability as an aspect of someone's identity that influences the experience of an individual, not as the sole defining feature of a person. In the 1930s, the United States started realizing with the advancement in technology as well as government assistance programs that people with disabilities could be self-reliant and self-sufficient. In 1933, when Franklin D. Roosevelt took office as President of the United States, he became one of the biggest advocates for people with disabilities. One reason for that was that he lived with the effects of polio, limiting his mobility, but still served as president for 3 terms in office.
After World War II, many veterans lived their lives with disabilities as a result of wounds in combat. This brought to light living conditions and institutions as well as those in which people with intellectual disabilities lived. All of this awareness led to improvements in personal rights for people with disabilities. People with disabilities still did not have access to public transportation, telephones, bathrooms, and stores. Most office buildings and work sites with stairs offered no entry for people with disabilities who sought employment, and employer attitudes created even worse barriers. Otherwise talented and eligible people with disabilities were locked out of opportunities for meaningful work. In the 1960s, the civil rights movement was the support that people with disabilities needed to move forward. People with disabilities joined forces with minorities to fight for equal treatment, equal opportunity, and equal rights. Also, beginning in Sweden during the late 1960s, people with intellectual disabilities were supported to form and lead their own leisure clubs. This led to national conferences for the members of these clubs, which were held in 1968 and 1970. At these conferences, the participants developed statements of how they wanted to be treated. In 1972, the idea spread to Great Britain, Canada, and the United States. In reaction to the control by professionals in the field of community living, individuals with disabilities formed self-advocacy groups.
In the state of Oregon, here in the United States, a group of people met for a plan meeting on January 8, 1972. There at the meeting, a man spoke about being labeled as mentally retarded. He stated boldly that he wanted to be known as a person first. The result of the passionate speech was the name of the movement, People First. So, in October 1974, they formed the group that was known as People First, because they felt that their disabilities were secondary to their identity as being people. From there, the idea of self-advocacy spread across North America. As the idea began to grow, and people began to become more passionate about the idea, by 1976, the first self-advocates were being elected to their local associations for community living to give them a voice. The International Year of the Disabled, proclaimed by the United Nations in 1981, gave a boost to the self-advocacy movement across the country. The Provincial Association, known as the BC Association of the Mentally Retarded, supported self-advocates by providing them with a platform to speak up and a strong united voice on important issues that included dealing with government. During the 1980s, the United States, there with a large community coalition of self-advocates, family members, and service providers who wanted to close the institutions for people with intellectual disabilities. The goal was to have all the individuals who had been segregated for many years released so that they could live in the community with the required supports to give them a dignified life. In 1984, the first International Self-Advocacy Leadership Conference was held in Tacoma, Washington. In 1991, the efforts of self-advocates led to the national organization called Self-Advocates Being Empowered, which is a national coalition of state and local self-advocacy organizations governed by a steering committee made up of 16 self-advocate representatives from all over the country.
After decades of lobbying and campaigning, the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990. The ADA intended to prohibit discrimination on the basis of disability in employment, services rendered by state and local governments, places of public accommodation, transportation, and telecommunication services. Under the ADA, businesses were mandated to provide reasonable accommodations to people with disabilities, such as restructuring jobs or modifying work equipment. Public services could no longer deny services to people with disabilities, such as public transportation systems. All public accommodations were expected to have modifications made to be accessible to people with disabilities. And all telecommunication services were mandated to offer adaptive services to people with disabilities. With this piece of legislation, the U.S. government identified the full participation inclusion, and integration of people with disabilities in all levels of society. Today, there are many self-advocacy organizations making a positive impact for people with disabilities. Every one of these groups builds connections with people, as well as with families and the community.
In our first activity, we're going to learn more about ourselves. This is called our Getting to Know You worksheet. You can find your worksheet in the colored folder of your notebook. The sheet looks like this. There are 2 pages. Pause the video and take some time to locate your sheets. Now that you have found your worksheets, here are the directions to this activity. The goal of this worksheet is to take a look at our strengths and challenges. In the directions, place a checkbox next to the skill that describes you. If it does not, just leave it blank. Also in the box, you can feel free to write any talent not listed on the page. We would like to know what you consider to be your strengths and weaknesses. Please email us at luke.barber@esmw.org or tyler.hannigan@esmw.org. A picture of your worksheets. Take the time now to pause the video and complete the worksheets.
Now that you've completed your worksheet, we assess things that we are good at and things that we would love to do. This leads us to think about our strengths and weaknesses. Think about Superman. What are his strengths?
I love to watch Superman and read the comic books. Superman has a lot of strengths. He is a man of steel with super strength. He can stop a speeding bullet. He can stop a train. He can fly.
Okay, Tyler, those are all good answers. What about weaknesses? Does Superman have a weakness?
Yes, kryptonite. Kryptonite will completely weaken him and take his powers away.
That's right, kryptonite will really hurt Superman. Why would it be important for Superman to know his strengths and weaknesses?
So he'd be able to fight crime and survive against the bad guys.
One more question. Why would it be important for us to know our strengths and weaknesses?
That's easy, so we can be the best people that we can be and live our best life.
What is another word for strengths and weaknesses?
That's another easy one. Some people call it abilities and disabilities. It's very important that we know how to speak about our disabilities so that we can freely speak about it with others in the community. One thing for us to always keep in mind is that we must focus on our abilities and not our disabilities. No one should diss your ability. Abilities are divided into 5 categories. They are mental abilities, physical abilities, personal qualities, interpersonal abilities, and specific skills and talents.
When we speak about mental abilities, we speak about the power to learn or retain knowledge. It is our ability to understand facts and behavior. In other words, it is our capacity to learn. Physical abilities are defined as our ability to do things with our body, to exert strength, endurance, flexibility, balance, and coordination. Take the time now to talk to your family, friend, or direct support professional about those 2 abilities and how they relate to you and your life. You may pause the video now.
Moving along with the types of abilities, our third type is personal qualities. They are the personal characteristics of an individual. Those qualities are what make up our personality. It is how we react to situations. It is our character, our internal motivations, and our inner strengths. And the fourth ability, it's called interpersonal abilities. It's defined as how we interact with other people. The last ability is specific skills and talents. It is defined as tasks that we are good at, things that come naturally, and things that we have been taught. Take the time now to talk to your family, friend, or direct support professional about these 2 abilities, how they relate to you and your life. You may pause the video now.
One thing for us to always keep in mind is that we must focus on our abilities, not disabilities. People are not disabled. We, like every human being, deal with personal challenges. Some people deal with more challenges than others. Challenges can be overcome. Challenges are not limitations. Overcoming challenges helps us to be stronger people.
We looked at all of our strengths, which included our skills and talents. What about our challenges? As Superman would refer, kryptonite.
What challenges do we face?
Time management, organization, spelling, and grammar.
Why is it important for us to know the challenges that we face?
If we are aware of our challenges, we can identify solutions to the barriers and overcome them.
Why does it make us stronger to overcome challenges?
When we overcome these challenges, it makes us stronger because we know how to adapt to them. We then know what works and can use a similar strategy to other challenges.
Let's review. Remember that it is important to know what you like and what you are gifted at. Everyone has many different kinds of gifts that make a team strong. Remember that it takes 4 wheels for a car to drive. When we lose one, then it does not go. We are all needed. Also, we should know our challenges to make our strengths stronger.
In our last activity, we would like for you to draw a self-portrait as you see yourself. After you have drawn yourself, write down an example of at least 2 strengths from each category: mental abilities, physical abilities, personal qualities, interpersonal abilities, and specific skills and talents. Please email us a picture of your completed portrait to luke.barber@esmw.org or tyler.hannigan@esmw.org.
In our next module, we will take a deeper look at rules, rights, and responsibilities, and what are our rights and responsibilities as good citizens. See you in Module 2 when we continue on and learning more about self-determination and leadership.